There we go. It hardly seems possible. Um, so happy to be here. And as always, we want to acknowledge that we are working and living and playing on the treaty lands in Alberta, Treaty 7, Treaty 6. And I can't remember the new proper way to say this, but the Métis lands as well. So thank you all for being here, and happy to be with you today. So our finance team, we have a finance advisory council who works with me and John Denhout, who does our accounting, and we work on all matters of finance. Sue Broderick is the chair of that group. Alan Buckingham represents the executive on that group. Cindy Christie Brooks is on that group. Richard Betts. I'm not sure if Richard is here. I think that's all of us, right? Did I miss anyone? Yeah, that's everyone. So they're a hardworking group of people, and this year we're going to be putting some focus on creating a long-term financial plan. So that's what some of our work is going forward, to try to figure out how we can be sustainable as an organization. So I'm going to invite John to share information about our finances. And then as we go forward, if you've got questions, just raise your hand and we'll be happy to respond to those, both as we go along and at the end. Thanks, John.
Okay. All right. I'll see if I can share a screen here. Okay, maybe this one. Now you should have a screen in front of you that shows assets. Is that what you, make sure I have the right screen? We're good? Okay. So as a big overview, the total assets of Chinook Winds for 2020, at the end of 2023, is about 4.3 million compared to 4.6 million the year before. And so you see there, we have some cash, we have marketable securities, about 3.1 million, 3.2 million, some debt to related parties, and some GST that's recoverable. And then we have long-term assets that have been loaned out to various communities of faith in the region. So that's 4.3 million. On the other side, we have some liabilities. Most of those have been paid already at the end of the year. And they were essentially between Chinook Winds owing Pacific Mountain region and United Church of Canada. And we also have funds, about $4 million worth of funds, which we can show a breakdown of on the next slide. Some of that is restricted, and we'll just roll down the next page here, and you'll see here we have unrestricted funds, externally restricted funds, and internally restricted funds. So of the $4 million, about $765,000 is operating fund, which primarily used to fund the operations for 2024. And we also have externally restricted funds, which are funds that have, some of them came from the previous Northwest, Alberta Northwest Conference, and others have been donated to us, but they came with restrictions. In other words, there was a specific purpose for which they were to be used, and so we have to respect those. And so that's why they're called externally restricted, and that's a total of $322,000. Some of them are in the nature of funding that can be loaned out and repaid. Others can be granted out as a one-way ticket out the door. Internally restricted funds are the ones that the executive have some control over. And some of them may initially come with certain purposes, and those purposes may have a sunset clause, or situations may arise where we need to reallocate those funds and use them for a different purpose after due consideration and deliberation. There's a lot of numbers there to digest. I'm assuming you've had an opportunity to look at these numbers before you came on board today. If you want me to linger over them, I can do that. I should also point out, of the $1 million that's sitting under the Property and Church Development Fund, there's 859,000 of it that has been unallocated. The difference is basically funds that have been loaned out to other congregations to facilitate the things that they are doing. So let me just pause there and see if you want to. I'll let you feast your eyes on the externally restricted funds and have a look.
Can you tell me what the criteria is to borrow funds?
Well, you make an application. In some cases, there may be interest attached. In other cases, it's interest free, and there's a certain terms of repayment, and they will vary depending on which fund is being approached. And the term of the loan, how long you have to pay it back, is negotiated at the time.
It depends on the fund really, and we don't have like a ton of funds to be able to be loaned out. Really, the only fund is for the capital funds, and you would initially talk to myself or Joel or Karen to explore that possibility.
Thank you.
Yeah. Here are the internally restricted funds. There's some large ones there. You'll see them around the $500,000 mark. Excuse my voice is not helping me today. Most of those came from the proceeds of the sale of St. Matthew's United Church a few years ago. And most of them around the $500,000 mark. For example, is the David Ferguson Music Bursary Fund. It has grown by $34,000 because of the investment income that's been allocated to that fund, as they have to some of the others. Others have gone down because some of the funds have been used up for the purposes that they're designed. In our formal financial statements, as you notice, this has a draft sign on it. Because these are numbers, they're based on our internal accounting system. The accounting firm that's reviewing the financial statements for 2023 have not completed their work yet. So that's why these are in draft forms, and the final numbers may change slightly, but the big picture is certainly there. But those final reviewed financial statements include quite a number of notes which identify the purpose of these various funds in a very abbreviated format. We might want to consider, just as an aside, whether we want to put the criteria for these various funds on our website to facilitate answering the questions that's just been asked.
I would think that would be a good idea. Just so we know.
Okay, moving on down. So here's the big picture receipts and disbursements or expenses that we have compared to the budget for 2023 and compared to the actual amounts from the prior year. Overview is that we have over almost 1.2 million coming into the Chinook Winds region from the sources shown above. And you'll notice we have $325,000 from the assessment share. Denomination eminent mission and service funds 240, which by the way will be reduced to about 180,000, is gonna be reduced to 180. And I think it's 2024, I think. No, this year. It's been reduced. And then we have a regional assessment, which is generally, it's about 10% of what the national denomination assessment is. And this one is higher this year than we budgeted because we only collect this when the national office collects those assessments from the individual churches in the region. So we're playing a little bit of catch up there.
Yeah, there was also some that were in arrears that have come in, so that's part of the reason.
Yeah. So we also have $260,000 worth of investment income, which is higher than we had budgeted. And in the prior year, we had a loss. The market, as you may know, stock markets and investment portfolios are quite volatile, have been for some time. But we were fortunate enough to experience a 10% yield in 2023. So that was well received. We do not budget for proceeds from the sale of property because we do not know at the time we do the budgets which properties may or may not be for sale. And neither with the donations, it's very difficult to forecast. So rather than throw a number that we have no basis for, we don't necessarily budget for that unless we know in advance that there is a property or some donations pending.
I'm going.
Sorry, did I miss a question?
No.
Oh, okay. In terms of expenses, we have, for the current year, we had 1.4, almost 1.5 million in expenses. And one of the worst places to live is outside your income. So that's a problem which we are trying to address. And so you'll see the breakdown there, the salaries, the grants, unrecoverable losses, and I'll just scroll down. There's a summary there that I hope you can read that. I can make it larger if you like. Down. So the major variances for 23 are the investment income is 142,000 more than we had budgeted. The regional assessment income is about $22,000 more than budgeted. Other grants income was $24,000 or $25,000 less than we had anticipated in the budget. And of course, I mentioned already that $92,000 proceeds from the sale of property. Donations we received are $24,000 higher than budget. There's a loan loss of $120,000, which relate to the Ogden United Church, which were anticipated as stated in the note 12 in the 2022 financial statements, but we didn't know at that time the magnitude of the exposure. And then there are professional fees, are $19,000 than budgeted, primarily from legal fees, which are hard to predict. So I'll just shrink this and you can, where's my minus sign here? Here we go. So let's look at
talk a little bit about that loss of Ogden United Church is covered, because back in the time we'd heard that this would be potential great redevelopment for different church buildings. Will we recover some of that?
Hi, I'll respond to that. So there was money that was advanced to Ogden as a loan from the capital fund, which that's kind of the purpose of it, to support that kind of redevelopment. And then the development fell apart as a result of a number of reasons. One being COVID and increasing interest rates and supply chain issues that caused the project to increase in cost, but there were many factors. It's complicated. No, we're not anticipating recovery of that. The property was sold, and it wasn't sold for enough to cover the debt on the development.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
This
Unfortunately,
statement is, go ahead.
no, go ahead. That's fine.
This statement here, I'll scroll through it because it's kind of wide and deep. This is a summary of the fund activities in 2023. For example, we have an operating fund that started off with $968,000 at the beginning of the year. We received $614,000 during the year, and we expensed $800,000. And so it's a net change, a reduction of $203,000. So at the end of the year, we have the $765,000 I referred to earlier. On the externally restricted funds, we had a total of 376 at the beginning of the year. We had receipts of 107,000 and expenses of 161, which basically went to the various projects that they were designed for. And then we have a net reduction of $54,000, leaving 322 to be used going forward. Let me just hover there for a minute. You kind of take a quick look at some of the funds that may be of interest to you or you may not be aware of. It's okay if I go down the next slide?
Yep.
Okay. And the internally restricted funds, we had $3 million at the beginning of the year. We got 469,000 coming in, and we had 514,000 going out to support the activities that we have and the grants that were issued. And that's a net reduction of $45,000, leaving about 3 million, pardon me, at the end of the year. And so their total fund balance is the $4,083,000 shown there. And again, I'll just let that sit for a minute, and you can have a look at those.
Anyone have questions about those?
Okay, and then this schedule here shows the grants that were issued during the year. So at the beginning of the year, the mission support grant from prior years that weren't distributed is $167,000. The property and church development used up $15,000 this year, which we'll see down below. And then we received $240,000 from the M&S grants. And as you may be well aware, each region in Canada gets the same amount of $240,000 as a function of redistributing the assessments. And so that's what we have to live with. And so that's the sum of those two are what was available. And this is where we used the funds in $151,000 that went to these directly to these organizations right there. So all of that, I'll leave that for a minute so you can have a look. And if you have any questions, by all means, fire away.
And then that amount was reduced for 2020, for 2024.
Yeah, down to 180,000.
So I'm interested particularly in campus ministry in Lethbridge. Are you, will they be looking at a decrease in support in the coming year? They got 12,000 last year, and it's a very campus ministry needs more funding.
Yeah, I agree with you. Campus
And-
ministry needs more funding. I can't remember what was done for specifically the campus ministries in 2024, but those grants have already been allocated. But campus ministry as a whole is really, we're trying to look at it regionally, not just sort of by city, to look at all of the places and to ensure that we're getting good coverage in the campuses across the whole region. And so we're working with the different ministries to develop the community connectors, great connections between the campus ministries and the communities of faith. So we've been putting quite a bit of focus on campus ministries in the past year. The plan is to continue to do that, but it is an area that requires additional funding for all of the campus ministries across the region.
Has a budget in that for 2024?
I don't have the number in front of me, but there was grants applied for and received, and that information has been communicated to the different campus ministries.
Okay.
For Lethbridge, for the campus ministry in Lethbridge, it's $10,000 for 2024.
So we're going to be getting less then.
They
Yeah,
were, so yeah, John says it's 10,000, which is down 2,000. But remember, the amount of money that we received was cut from 240 to 180.
Yeah. Okay.
And so there's 151,000 that went directly to other, to those folks. And then YYC campus ministry has been moved internally into the Chinook Winds region. So those mission support grant funds for the purposes that YYC exists have been used and they come directly into Chinook Winds, and we've applied those as shown there. So there was $65,000 in 2023 used for that purpose. So the total amount of grants distributed was $217,000. And that leaves $190,000 available going forward to 2024. In addition to the 180,000 that will be coming through on a quarterly basis. It's divided into 4 quarters when they do that distribution. And so that's what we have available to work for in 2024. And there was $15,000 grant given by the Property and Church Development to the Ogden United Church. And there may be more, there's a plan to provide more to the extent that it could be being considered now to give them some of the resources to help them grow. And I don't know if Treena wants to address that or not for 2024.
For the YYC?
No, for Ogden.
For Ogden, yeah. So yeah, we're in the process of working with Ogden because there was some money that came in from the sale of the land, and they have a loan with us that exceeds the amount of money, but the congregation also needs to survive. So there's some work being done between Ogden and the region to determine how much comes in to pay off the remaining loan and how much Ogden get to keep to support their ministry. So our loan is filed as sort of the first thing they have to pay. But we're also aware they need to pay their minister and things like that. So we're just working with them and the executive to determine that, and that will show up in next year's budget.
And thus endeth the lesson. That's the end of my page.
So are there any questions?
One thing I can share with you is that based on the budget for 2024, the total resources, including operating and restricted funds, are budgeted to be reduced in 2024 by almost $300,000. And so that's what's concerning us. There's not many years that we can continue to do that and still have a functional region. So that's why we're looking at having a meeting in a few months to strategize on alternatives. But we should be aware that we can't sustain it the way we are doing it at the moment, not for long term.
Which is rather scary.
It is indeed, yeah. And we're anticipating more cuts from the national sort of transfer payments that we receive from national are gonna be cut again probably in 2025, because the national is going to keep more of that to address their own deficit. And so it is a bit of it's an important time for us to take a look at that and to figure out how to use the resources within the region to maintain the level of services that we offer to support communities of faith on the ground. And we'll also have to get really clear about what are the things that are needed and what are the services that are really valued in the region, and what are the things that we want to make sure continue going forward, and are there things we're doing that it's the end of their natural needs, or what are there things we're doing that we can stop doing, and so on. So those are the big questions for us going forward.
I'm Irene, and I have a question. If donation is made specifically like for YYC campus ministry, does that free up funds to be used elsewhere, or how is that used if it's a specific external restricted fund?
Yeah, so it would, yes, indeed, it would free money up for other things. So we would use the restricted funds, designated restricted funds first. Like there's two ways that you can use restricted funds. If it's a really big amount, you might invest it and use the income from that investment to support the ministry in an ongoing way. And or if it's a smaller amount that isn't going to produce enough interest, then you can choose to just use the contents of that fund. So either way. So ideally, to create sustainability, we would want to have investments that are producing enough income that we can have a balanced budget from those incomes. That's one possibility.
Okay, thanks.
The thing about designated gifts is that they can't be used for anything else. So if they're designated, they will definitely be used for the purposes to which they were designated. Any other questions?
So the budgeted missions for next year, have they been all decided now? Like you say, campus ministry Lethbridge is getting a reduction of 10, or all of the others budgeted for?
So we do the mission support grants based on applications that come in. And so we put the applications out sort of towards the end of the year, and then the Finance Advisory Council meets and makes the difficult decisions. This past year, because there was a reduction in the amount that was coming, the applications that we received far exceeded the amounts that we had available to give. And so we had difficult decisions to make, but everybody got cuts to what they had been previously receiving. And some grants were just not approved at all. So it was very difficult decisions. There is a small contingency that we've kept for things that come up in the year. So there is some bit of money available from the mission and sports grants if things come up throughout the year that we need to support. I'm not expecting another cut in the mission and service grant for 2025. It should be the same amount as we received for 2024, but I am anticipating a cut to the assessment income in 2025. So this year's so it's just sort of less and less, more and more cuts coming.
Assessments will probably have to increase.
That'll be a question. National is choosing not to increase the assessment. Rather, they're cutting the grants to the regions. But we could consider increasing the regional assessment. But congregations are not really in a position to be able to give a lot more either. So that's the other piece that we have to think about when we're looking at things like increasing assessments. Any other questions? Do any of the members of the Finance Advisory Council want to say anything? Don't have to. Just give
It's very heartening to see so many people in the Zoom room. Part of developing a good strategic plan going forward will require engagement from folks in the region. So I'm very heartened to see this. It's wonderful. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions, I want to take this opportunity to extend my thanks to the finance team. We have John Denhoud and Karen Norrie. Karen Norrie does bookkeeping, John's the accountant, and then the Finance Advisory Council, who I already mentioned, and Mauricio Arujo, my assistant, who does lots of work to support in the background all of the various groups that are working together. We're very lucky to have the people that we have working with us, and really appreciative of the guidance that they offer us, and looking forward to engaging in this coming year to think about the work that we need to do to create a sustainable financial future for Chinook Winds region. So if there aren't any other questions, I guess we'll just wind up our time together today. Thank you so much, as Cindy said, for being here and engaging the questions. And I'll look forward to seeing you all soon at the regional meeting. It's going to be great. Very exciting.
Safe travels.
Take care.
Okay.